Hey guys, so just real quick, just like I did in the last video, I wanted to add a little introduction here. We're doing rounds 2 and 3 in this upcoming video. There's no real intro into it because it was a cut based off an entire video. So I just wanted to come on and let you guys know that this was the case in case things seemed like a little bit off. We didn't want to make the video too long. So I just wanted to add this in here to let you guys know. You guys are going to see what we perceive as a solid round 2 and 3 when it comes to your Dynasty Superflex League round. All right. So in this piece, let's jump into the second round. You can kick it off here for us, Sam. Who would you take at the first pick of the second?
Yeah, so to kick off the second round here, if I just took Jordan Love with that last pick and I'm looking at what else is available, I, you know, people might disagree. Someone might want to go Bijan, someone might want to go Marvin Harrison. I just want to shore up that QB room a little bit here because I don't think come to 312 there's going to be that many great options left. I'm just going to take Caleb Williams here. Um, Again, a little controversial here, but
Yeah,
he
I
is
can see it.
just I'm sure you have some thoughts on that, but
Yeah,
he is one of the best QB prospects we've seen come to the league in the past 10 years. His ceiling is Mahomes level, honestly. And I think with Love and Williams, you have a chance of having two top seven, two top eight QBs come the end of the year. And I know you have thoughts on this, so I'll let you go, but I like Williams here a lot.
I think at this stage, it's not that I don't think Caleb Williams would be a solid fantasy contributor, but I do think that there are going to be some later round quarterbacks that come back around at this pick. If you recall, in our other Superflex league, Kirk Cousins was there. When did Joe take him? Like
It's got to
round
be
10,
seven, eight, something
7,
like that.
8, somewhere in that range. It was after round 5. Kirk Cousins was still there. And I think in that scenario, that's what you have to levy. Like you have to like, does this make sense? Can I get Matt Stafford in those late rounds? So I don't screw myself from a position perspective because the next tier that Team 12 in this scenario is going to face when it comes to running backs and wide receivers is not going to be particularly great at his stage. So that's why I definitely lean into Bijan or Marvin, who I know is going to be a very high end positional player for years to come. But all right, Team 11, with that said, um, I would definitely be juggling at this stage between Bijan Robinson and Marvin Harrison. I already got Anthony Richardson sitting on my team, which is obviously already a solid position to be in. I got to go position player and think about the future when it comes and see what's there. So in this scenario, I'm going to be taking Bijan Robinson. I expect him to have immense upside in that offense now that Arthur Smith is gone. I still don't. I can't wrap my head around what he was doing Bijan last year. It just blows my mind. But I think Bijan's going to have an absolute monster year this year, and it's just an immense value grab at this stage in round 2 early. And I already got a quarterback, so there's no reason for me not to.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think at this part of the draft, when these nine QBs are off the board, I think there's a bit of a teardrop there. Um, but if I'm looking at Team 10, I have Jamar Chase. Obviously, you probably need a quarterback at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at the options there, you have Herbert, you have Kyler Murray, you have Trevor Lawrence, who I think you could make an argument for any of them.
Yep.
But even though I don't think Herbert has the best situation this year, I think he's still the best available QB. Obviously, he doesn't have the rushing upside of Richardson or Lamar, but he does use his legs and does get some rushing touchdowns and yards there. He obviously has a cannon for an arm.
He does.
If they can improve that wide receiver room this year or the following year through the draft or free agency, I think his value kind of pushes him back in that top 10 conversation. You might just have to kind of lower your expectations for this year's output.
Sure. I'll obviously let you take the next one. It's you.
Yeah. So if I have Joe Burrow here, this is actually kind of an interesting one here. I'm looking at the QBs, the wide receivers. I'm probably going to take Marvin Harrison at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be between Marvin Harrison and Puka just because Puka had such a historic season as a rookie. It's hard to kind of pass that up.
I'll do it real quick.
Uh, but I, what's that?
I said I would do it real quick. I take the receiver after him before I take him.
You would take
I
Garrett
take
Wilson?
Garrett Wilson before I take Puka.
I don't know. Garrett Wilson's never had a season like Puka yet, and he's been in
Yeah,
the
he
league for
will
2 years.
now.
Maybe.
We'll see. He's going to eat this
Um,
year.
yeah.
And I traded him.
Well, I'm sure we'll come back around to you at some point in the draft here,
Yeah,
but
sorry. Go ahead. Go on, Marvin Harrison.
no, I just think that Marvin Harrison, he's just one of those super elite wide receiver prospects coming in the league, on par with someone like a Lamb or Chase or Jefferson coming in. I think it's just next year you might see him kind of in that row above where he's at right now when we're
Yep.
looking at startups again. So I like Burrow, I like Harrison. I think that's a good way to start off the draft here.
Okay. All right. Can you flip it back to all? So looking at this scenario coming into this, right? I mean, this is where a lot of my mock drafts landed. It was very tough for me because you can see the next, what is that, 6, 7? When's the next quarterback show up on there? Is it Kyler Murray at like
Yeah, it's
25,
Kyler at 24.
24?
Yep.
I looked at the next 7 players and I'm like, these guys are all studs. Every single one. And they're all going to be gone on my next pick. So I gauged and I was like, what do I do here? Do I stay position or do I go QB? Am I forced to go QB here? Are Team 7 and Team 6 in this case? They're probably going to go quarterback, right? It's high. So I ran into a lot of like struggle here looking at myself as I was doing this and like, what should I do? And in a lot of my mock drafts that was simulating here, I actually ended up going Brees Hall. I was torn between him and Garrett Wilson at this position because I think the combination of Amon Ra and Garrett Wilson is going to be absolutely ridiculous. But I went Brees Hall. I don't really need to elaborate on Brees Hall here. Everyone knows what he's done since he's come to the league. He's a stud of a running back when it comes down to it. For me in this position, it's me trying to get the best value of where I am. Okay? Now, I know this is Superflex. And people are like, oh, you don't have a quarterback yet, and that's the end of round 2. And trust me, I've thought about it. And this is what I've been debating going into our draft coming in of like what I'm going to do because I think I'm going to be in a similar scenario at this pick when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I mean, I get it from a value perspective of maybe wanting Hall and Dynasty over Kyler Murray.
Mm-hmm.
I would have such a difficult time leaving the first 2 rounds without a quarterback. Um, so while I agree from you from an individual perspective, if nothing else was factored in, I would be taking Hall there too. I think if I'm Team 7 in this case, or I'm Team 6, where I went wide receiver first round, I'd be looking at Kyler Murray with this next pick here. He is a super talented QB. He has that rushing upside as well. Obviously, there's been more of like kind of character concerns, like does he watch enough film? Does he work hard enough? But if he's able to kind of put that aside, he has Marvin Harrison Jr., he has Michael Wilson, Zay Jones in that offense. He has the weapons. I think this is his potential to have his best year yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he can maybe put some of those kind of off the field issues kind of behind him there.
No, I like Kyler Murray here. He's high on my list this year. I think he's being undersold pretty heavily in a lot of leagues, which actually kind of surprised me because outside of last year, he's been a pretty consistent fantasy producer and he gives you rushing upside. He's going to run the ball. He's going to score touchdowns rushing, and he's got a decent arm when it comes down to it. I just think he's over there on Arizona, like dwindling away because he doesn't have anybody to throw to. So,
Yeah.
so it puts him in a really tough spot. All right, so Team 6. As you can see here after that Kyler Murray pick, it's another scenario running similar to what Team 8 did. You got top flight every position. You can't go wrong drafting anyone. But you're going to have, should I take a quarterback? Right? And for me, next up off the charts is Jaden Daniels. There's no doubt about it. You're taking a quarterback here. You're going to take Jaden Daniels. Team 6 is just going to have that decision to make when they go down to it. So, yes, Jaden Daniels is going on here. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be a monster. I do. I like him over Caleb Williams. I do. I
Interesting.
I think there's more upside.
I wouldn't be shocked if Jaden Daniels finishes this year with more fantasy points than Caleb Williams.
Hmm.
I think it goes back to like the Mahomes versus Hurts argument, and we obviously know where you stand on that side of the argument. Uh, I think I prefer this. I think Williams is a bit of a safer pick,
Hmm.
and he doesn't not have rushing upside. Caleb Williams uses his legs. I'm sure he'll be used in like some read option plays there with Swift or Herbert in the backfield too. But
Right.
I think you could make an argument for Daniels. That's definitely fair. And if I'm looking back at this now, I think these teams here are in a really good position. They already all have an elite QB. And at this stage, there's still probably like 6 or 7 really elite non QB players available. So if I'm Stroud, I think I'm going Christian McCaffrey here. I'd be between him and Gibbs just due to the age difference here. But we know last year if you have a healthy CMC on your team, you're probably a contender. And at the end of the day, winning your league is probably a lot more valuable than having some trade calculator or power league rankings tell you that you're better off because you have Gibbs. If you're going for the win and you're team five, I'm taking CMC here.
Yeah, I can't argue that. I can't argue Christian McCaffrey going anywhere when it comes down to it. It's just you got to think dynasty when you do it, and you already got a quarterback, so why not? For me, next, I don't like Gibbs here. Look, I like Gibbs, I do, but he's got David Montgomery back there, and Montgomery is going to be eating his touchdowns, like all over the place. I had him. I traded for him last year in my one league, and he gave me points despite being the number 2 because he just scores touchdowns. His power. And Gibbs, I think he's going to have a better season than he did last year, but that's why I'm passing on him. I'm going Garrett Wilson. I already told you I like him over Puka. I don't think we're going to see Puka do what he did last year. Cup is 100% healthy this time. Garrett Wilson is wide receiver 1. He's going to come in. He's got a healthy Aaron Rodgers. He's just going to have a really, really, really good year. I just like Wilson overall. I think he has not had the career that he's capable of because the quarterbacks on the Jets have been absolutely atrocious. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
would see him, I think, with someone like Chase or Jefferson with his numbers. If he had a QB like Kirk Cousins throwing to him or Joe Burrow throwing to him.
Yeah, no, I know how much you love Wilson, and he's a tough player to gauge.
Hmm.
It depends on how much you trust Aaron Rodgers, 40 years old, coming off an Achilles injury.
He's
Well,
39.
I think it'll be an improvement. What's that?
I say he's 39.
Going on 40, whatever. It's, I mean, obviously still a step up from their QB play last year.
Yeah.
Will it be enough to get him to like that 1,500-yard mark and, 10 touchdowns like a St. Brown level? I don't know. Um, but at this point, if I'm team three, Wilson, CMC, Brees Hall are off the board. I know you don't love Gibbs as much. I think what we saw at the end of last year was we saw Gibbs really start to eat into the red zone work that David Montgomery was getting. And that continued to progress like every week as it went on. Obviously, if the Lions, get it down to the 1 yard line, Montgomery's probably the guy to bring it out there. But we saw Gibbs take over a huge amount of red zone work. He would rip off 10-yard, 20-yard touchdowns a lot at the end of the season there. He has the receiving upside that most backs in this league don't.
Hmm.
He, Brees Hall, CMC, and Bijan Robinson are really the only 4 running backs I'd even consider um, in the second round at all. So I'm happy to take Gibbs here.
Yeah, and Superflex, I agree with that. If this was a Superflex, I would disagree with that. We wouldn't see all these
Right.
quarterbacks off the board at this point if this wasn't Superflex, though.
Well, obviously, but this is a
Yeah.
super flex mock draft. So
So continuing with my trend of knocking Puka, I'm taking AJ Brown. AJ Brown is clear cut wide receiver 1. I know he had a slow second half last year after having an absolute insane first half of the season. I don't see that being a repeat situation. I think he's going to have another monster year when it comes down to it. Him and Devontae Smith both. I mean, the Eagles' offense, I'm not biased, but the Eagles' offense as a whole is just going to be really good this year. So I think he's going to have a really, really good season. And I just like his upside more than Puka when it comes down to it. I think we're going to see a regression from the Kua side.
Well, I'm glad that you believe that because I would be thrilled if I can take Puka here at the end of the second. I mean, he broke a ton of rookie wide receiver records last year. Matthew Stafford is kind of the kingmaker when it comes to producing these new fantasy relevant studs. Stafford's obviously, healthy this year. I know
And
Cooper
he's not
Cup's
taken yet.
right. Uh, I mean, I don't think Cup at his age is going to come back and be that wide receiver one. I think they might be like a 1A, 1B situation. But I just, even if Puka Nakua doesn't put up the same exact numbers as he did last year, getting him at the end of the second here is still good value, just knowing the potential upside and production he might kind of bring for you there.
Sure. Sure. And I would also be ecstatic coming around on the other side here. Because I would probably be leaning now into Tyreek Hill. I know Tyreek Hill is older at this point, but he has shown no signs of slowing down at this point. I suspect he's going to have another monster year. And sitting as team one, I now have an outstanding wide receiver core. And Josh Allen. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, no, I think that's the team that's probably competing, and we'll kind of adjust our mock for them going forward. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's a killer start. And if I'm team two here, I have Jalen Hurts, I have AJ Brown, I already have the Eagles stack going.
Mm-hmm.
I think at this point, I want to secure my next QB. I think there's only one more QB I'm really interested in here before there's a pretty obvious teardrop. So I'm going to take Trevor Lawrence here. He hasn't really lived up to the hype kind of coming into the league yet. He obviously just signed a huge $55 million a year contract, though. I think he's shown enough flashes. I think he's going to be in the league for years to come. He has weapons still. He just hasn't quite been able to piece it all together, but I think this year might be the year he really breaks out. And I'm very happy if I have Hurts, Brown, and Lawrence at this point.
Yeah, obviously that team's sitting in a good place, especially from the QB perspective. I would say they probably have the best QB combo, I think, at this point, which is good to see for them. For team three, it's another scenario where I am looking at the best player that's going to help me moving forward, and I would be taking Jonathan Taylor. So I now have the best running back room in the league. In this case, it's a value grab for me. I think I'd be foolish not to do it. As you mentioned, the QB tier starts to fall off as we're looking here. And I would definitely be leaning into considering Malik Neighbors as well. But I think at that point, I'm wrapping up my running back room. There's going to be an immense fall off in the running back position coming up, and wide receivers are much deeper.
Yeah, no, Taylor is an interesting one. I'm not so sure how I feel about him.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd probably wait a few picks on him here. But the guy that you just mentioned is who I'm taking next. I'd be taking Malik Neighbors here. Neighbors probably didn't get enough hype kind of coming into the draft just because he was going behind Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah.
But in most other years, he would have been like the clear-cut best non-QB option in this draft. It wouldn't even be particularly close.
Yep.
He's been killing it in camp so far. I think he's going to be that easy target monster for the Giants there. Although they have Daniel Jones there this year, I'm not sure that's the future for Neighbors, but I just think he's going to be so good for so many years. You just got to take him here.
I get it. I like Neighbors. I just don't like Daniel Jones. One of the dumbest things I've ever seen. And it
So
looks
next
like
pick, Daniel Jones.
Saquon. But yeah, looking at the next pick here, I like Saquon Barkley here, but I would not lean in his direction. I would probably look at a wide receiver at this point, studying the top receivers available here. I'd be taking Olave. For me, there's a fall off after the next two or three receivers where you start to hit that second tier. And Olave's someone with immense upside. And he's another scenario that's similar to Neighbors where the quarterback play is not the greatest. And if he's got someone behind him, I think he's going to be really, really good. But I'm going to shore up both positions. I have a top flight positional player at running back, wide receiver, and QB, which is a good place to be.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think there's two more wide receivers I kind of like in the same tier as Olave.
Yeah.
Granted, I don't necessarily think Olave is the best pick in the world just because that situation's really not that much better than it was last year. I'm not sure he's done anything to prove that he's like a top 10, top 12 dynasty wide receiver quite yet. This guy here hasn't though either, to be fair. Um,
Taking Drake London?
I'm thinking Drake London here. I think the breakout potential for him is better than Olave just because, as Kirk Cousins throwing the ball to him or, at worst, Michael Penix. So he just has not had a QB his entire time in the league. So if he can kind of ride off the wave of Kirk Cousins here and maybe be that alpha wide receiver one for the Falcons, I'll take that chance on him here.
No, that's fair. I like Drake London simply because he's got a better quarterback right now. Best quarterback he's played with. Obviously, a huge upgrade over Desmond Ritter, which is a bit of a joke. All right, so for Team 7, looking at what's on the board right now, I would be torn between ETN and Saquon Barkley because I think they are both strong picks here. And yes, I know Sam Laporta is high there. I'm not taking Laporta in this scenario. He's way too early for a tight end to be going in the third round. I think that there's many better options that you could take later. So with this perspective, I'm taking Saquon. And the reason I'm taking Saquon is because I like his situation better than ETN. And I like ETN. Saquon's playing behind arguably the best offensive line in the league. And it's going to make such a big difference from how he performed on the Giants, which he performed well on one of the worst offensive lines in the league. So giving him a good offensive line, I think he's going to be all over the field. Obviously, you get the standard hesitations when it comes to Barkley just because of injury history, but I think he'll be a lot less prone to having problems when he's being protected.
Yeah, well, this is obviously your team here too, Kyle, so feel free to take the next one too.
Yeah, so at this stage, for my team, I would definitely be looking more into a quarterback because it's just in this stage I don't have a quarterback right now. But looking ahead, I note that each team has a quarterback. One team has 2 QBs. So they're not going to be taking a quarterback. So I would look at myself and I'd go, what do I want to do? Do I want to go QB here? Or do I want to wait one more round? And the short answer is no. In this situation, I'm going to probably be leaning into Dak Prescott. I like Dak Prescott over Brock Purdy. I think it's a little bit funny to me how undersold he's being this year, considering the season he had last year. I think it was, this is off the top of my head, I think he threw for like 42 touchdowns, which was absolutely insane. He had a really, really, really good year. I don't see that changing, barring him and Lamb get their contract signed.
Yeah, no, I think if you made it through 3 rounds here without a QB and Superflex, I would be scratching my head a little bit here.
Yep.
I agree. I know Purdy's younger. I just question how good he'll be, especially if he loses Ayuk this year or Debo the next year.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dak's the better option. We've seen him be a top 5 QB, and he could definitely do it again with Lamb and some of those guys there.
Some of those guys.
Well, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Ferguson, Brandon Cooks, does it really make that big of a difference? But
Not particularly.
whatever. So mostly Lamb. But yeah, so at this stage here, I have Burrow, I have Marvin Harrison. I'd be tempted to look at like someone like Dak if he fell to me in this range. That's probably who I'd go with this pick. But since he didn't, I probably want to get my first running back here. I know that you like ETN. I just prefer Kyron Williams though.
Mm-hmm. Kyron's a stud, man.
Yeah, obviously most people were not expecting the kind of breakout he had last year, but I don't think Corum's gonna, compete with him that much, maybe other than give him some breathers here and there. He was a complete stud. The Rams are gonna just continue to rely on him, Puka, and Cup, I think, and I'm happy to take him here.
The concern about Kyron, I think, is his size. Like he's just not a big dude. I think he's like 5'10". So he's not a big dude, and I think that's really where a lot of the concern comes in when it comes to Kyron Williams. But he had a monster year last year. I like him a lot. Big reason I took him in our other league. But yeah, I don't disagree with that take. And needless to say, Team 10 here is going to be taking ETN. There's just no doubt about it. The fall off from a running back perspective, I believe, after him is a little bit like you're looking at another tier down. Excuse me. And I know you have HN and like those guys sitting there. I'm sorry. I don't dislike HN. I don't see what all the hype is yet. I think people are jumping to conclusions pretty quickly. I think he's got potential. But the way he's being drafted is that he's like an incredible RB1, and we have not seen that yet at a sustained level. I'm sorry. You can't reach in certain scenarios for a sample size that's too small. And I know you do that with some rookies here like Caleb Williams and stuff, but there's a reason he's in the position he's in, and there's a reason Mostert is probably still going to be taking a ton of touchdowns from him. And now you're getting all the talk with Jalen Wright sitting there potentially eating some carries too. I just don't know. I think they're going to be a very, very big committee when it comes to the running back situation in Miami.
Yeah, no, I agree with the HN take there. They have Mostert. Wright's obviously looking pretty good in preseason and is a bit of a bigger body than HN, so we'll see how it shakes out. Obviously, super efficient when he has the ball in his hand.
Yeah.
It's just going to come down to, volume and can a little running back like that stay healthy. And I think if I'm Team 11 here, I have a QB, a little riskier though. I have Bijan Robinson. I'm thinking in the next two picks, I'm getting my second QB here, especially if your first QB is a guy who only played 2 games in his entire NFL career so far. But I want to make sure I secure who I think is the last elite wide receiver on the board here. So I'm going to take Brandon Ayuk. He probably is dropping a little bit just because of that contract situation here. We're not sure if he's going to be on the 49ers. Will he be in Pittsburgh? Will he be, God forbid, on the Browns? But he's just such an elite talent that no matter the situation, I think he'll be the wide receiver 1 on that team. So I'll take a chance here. I think he fell to us for that reason. So I'm happy to get my first wide receiver as Team 11 at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is where it gets a little interesting for me. I know this is the last pick of the third round, so this will be the last pick of what we're doing here. We'll continue this, I think, in the other rounds in another video. But for me, I think there's a weird ADP scenario going on. For me, personally. Flip it to wide receiver. And I know that this is like consensus ADP. I don't see Waddle here at all. It's ridiculous that he's as high as he is. After last year when he was not good from a fantasy perspective. Rome Odunze, there's no sample size. He's not on the level of Neighbors or Marvin Harrison. I like Odunze. I think he's got a lot of potential. But the fact that Pittman, who's proven, Devontae Smith, who's proven despite being a wide receiver 2, Nico Collins, and DJ Moore are behind those two. When I'm pretty sure DJ Moore is a wide receiver 1, Nico Collins is considered the wide receiver 1, and Pittman is the wide receiver 1 on the respective teams. You'd be a fool not to take someone out of that bunch. So if I'm sitting at Team 12 right now, I'd be looking at my upside and I'd be grabbing Pittman.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with that. I think Pittman, Smith, Collins, Moore, I would take all of them over Waddle or Odunze there.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And this is what I mean at the beginning of the video. Like I said, like the ADP isn't always going to be the way, and a lot of people fall into it. And if you go back to the overall, you'll notice we skipped quite a few people. Laporte is still sitting there. I think Laporte is going to regress. That's a big reason for me. I don't see him doing what he did last year. And I like Laporte. I think he's going to have a good year, just not what he did last year. And
I don't know if I agree with you on Laporte regression. I think right around the Pittman, like on the turn here, like I know we're not talking about round 4, But I think you can make the argument for Laporte at the end of the third, beginning of the fourth, and I'm not feeling too upset about that.
You could. Or you could set up a really stud wide receiver room, which is still good because you got quality. The next time around, you're not going to have these people, right? But I still think
Yeah.
you might have a tight end or two that is going to be decent quality, like
Yeah,
Brock
I think the
Bowers or
only
someone like that. Like he's still. I like Bowers a lot. I think he's going to. I think he's going later than he should be in a lot of drafts. But I don't disagree with you. Trey McBride, Sam Laporta. Like there's just so many options there. I think right now from the tight end perspective, still in this draft. And I don't think Laporta is TE1.
yeah. Well, I don't know if I agree with that, but
I don't.
moving on from the Laporta conversation, I think the only other like kind of one that fell out of the top three who's pretty consistently there for us is Brock Purdy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he obviously goes pretty quick in
He'll
the
probably go into team
fourth
11.
round here. Yeah. Again, it comes down to how you kind of strategize. You could take him for your second, QB for team, 9, 10, 11, 12 there. I think that makes sense. 12 obviously already had two QBs, but um, he's just one of those guys you don't know what to expect, especially if Ayuk is gone. Debo never stays healthy. His situation can get pretty bad pretty quick, and I think that's why he's kind of fallen for both of us here.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's just a tough situation for him. Like I like Purdy, but there's just so many what ifs going on in that offense that it's tough to trust it. If he loses Ayuk, it's a big fall off because Ayuk is really good,
Yeah.
and it's that's just going to sting. Samuel is not a wide receiver one. I like Samuel. He's good. He's going to give you fantasy points, but I view him more as like a gadget receiver. He's a wide receiver 2/3 who's going to run the ball, and he's going to put fantasy points. And he's going to be all over the damn field, but he's not a wide receiver one. Traditional, anyway. So it's an immense fall off if Debo Samuel becomes your wide receiver one, and then your other receiver is Ricky Pearsall. I don't know the rest of the receivers on that team. I like Pearsall, but no, it's just a huge drop off for Brock Purdy in that situation. Obviously, McCaffrey's still there, but we're not sitting here trying to get into too many details. We're here long enough.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap that up here. We'll definitely be back with another video where we dive into more of these drafts. We think the Superflex Dynasty is becoming more and more popular for people doing fantasy, and we're enjoying it so far, which is why we're looking forward to our draft next week. But in the next video, we'll do the next few rounds, and we'll just keep building it out so you guys can get a nice little sample size of what a team could look like at the end of a Superflex Dynasty draft. All right, thanks for watching, guys.